Hey kids, we're here with Teo Skinsnes. He's the president of Stomvi-USA. He's also a designer of mouthpieces and a student of acoustic science as it pertains to our trumpet world. So we're going to have a little talk with him and try and find out some of the cool things that he knows about our trumpet world. First question for you.
Yeah. If I may, Mr. Ruff, before we get started, I want to say that when John first asked me to do a Hey Kids interview, of course I was flattered and honored, but I also realized that it's quite a burden when you think about the depth of his channel, the content he has on there already. It's tough to come up with something that would be meaningful. And one thing I thought of was, they often say, when in Rome. So if I could just for a minute, I'll be right back. Hey, John, I'm ready to go.
It's good to see that you're in the spirit of the channel. That's very nice.
Absolutely. I've watched every video on the channel more than once.
Wow. He's obviously bored, folks. So I think helping the viewer understand kind of who you are and what your background is, can you give us just kind of a real, flash in the pan background of what you've done and your experiences?
Sure. The first thing I want everyone to realize is that I'm a trumpet player first. And playing the trumpet is the most enjoyable thing that I've ever done in my whole life, with a few exceptions. But no, playing the trumpet is very important to me. It always has been. And I'm not an engineer. I'm not a physicist. My math goes about as far as integral calculus, differential calculus, but I haven't used that for years. But what I'm really good at is I'm a conceptual guy. I'm good at understanding concepts. And again, I started out as a trumpet player, and I still think of myself as a trumpet player first. But along the way, I was fortunate enough to work with Bob Reeves, in my opinion, greatest mouthpiece maker that's ever lived. And he introduced me to Bill Cardwell, who is really the guy who put the last nail in the coffin regarding trumpet and mouthpiece design. And I was a friend of his and studied with him for about 15 years, maybe a little bit more. And then plus my relationship with Vicente Honorato, the founder of Stomvi, who's an amazing trumpet designer, mouthpiece designer, innovator, and does all kinds of things that I've never even thought of. And he thinks of them and he brings them to fruition. Putting all that together, plus I've always had a love of audio gear and loudspeakers and PAs, which if you think about it, loudspeaker design is very similar to trumpet design. There's horns involved, there's acoustics involved. All the things we think about in playing the trumpet happen in loudspeakers as well. And I was fortunate enough through my blues and R&B band, Reno Jones, to form a relationship with Meyer Sound. Meyer Sound are about the highest PA designers on the planet, speaker designers. And I have good friends there, and I try to cross-pollinate all these different ideas. Apparently my father, who was a research pathologist, was very, very good at connecting what seemed like a lot of dots that don't want to connect. And he was able to connect them. And if I feel I have a skill, that's what it is. My goal is to come across with concepts and ideas and products that help you as a trumpet player play trumpet better, have more fun. It's supposed to be about having fun.
So, when you mentioned William Cardwell, and he put the last nail in the coffin in the trumpet design world, I really want you to kind of take a look at that and explain to us what you mean by that. And in this consideration that there's all these new trumpet manufacturers out there making stuff, and so if he put the nail in the coffin of the design world, what are we seeing that's happening now? And if you can explain that.
There's two ways as I see it to design a trumpet or design a mouthpiece. And I've been fortunate to have my hand in both. And one way is what I see as the most common way. And that is that you have a trumpet maker who gets together with a famous trumpet player, a respected trumpet player, someone who they feel plays very, very well, and they decide to design a trumpet together. And the way they design it is the trumpet player or the trumpet builder says, well, you know, I think it should have a 5-inch bell on it. So they put a 5-inch bell on it and a certain lead pipe and this and that. And they, the player plays it and he goes, no, I don't quite like this right. Maybe it should be a 4.5-inch bell. So they try a 4.5-inch bell. Oh, that's a little bit better, but I don't know, maybe we should change this D-type tuning slide to an ovate tuning slide. Oh yeah, that's better. No, I like the D slide back. So the D slide goes back. So they try this, they try that, they try all these different kinds of things. They add weight, they change from conventional water keys to Amato style water keys. They move a brace here, they move a brace there. And after some number of iterations of this trumpet, they come up with a trumpet that works really well for this trumpet player. And then that becomes the model, and hopefully it works well for other players like you or me or anybody else as well. And that's certainly one way to do it, and as far as I can tell, it's the most common way. What Bill Cardwell did was he was a chemist, a mathematician, a physicist. He got his degree at Caltech, studied with Linus Pauling. He was a brilliant man, and he was also an amateur Dixieland trumpet player. He worked for Chevron Oil, and actually they used sound waves to locate oil in the ground. It's called beam steering. So here he's using his audio knowledge to do something that some might think is totally unrelated. So he felt that maybe he could help trumpet players out by coming up with an instrument that was easier to play. So Bill's idea was to design and build an instrument that was in tune with itself below the level of human discrimination. In other words, it was in tune relative to itself, better than the best human ears could discern, could hear. So he did a lot of work on this, and he built a device called a salpingometer, which allowed him to test a trumpet's intonation with a mouthpiece, very important, and also that simulated the lip penetration into the mouthpiece cup that we all have, although some of us use more and less. And he developed this machine, this device, this technical instrument where he could measure these instruments, any instrument with a mouthpiece, down to 1/17%, which is plus or minus 1 musical cent. And the best human ears are considered to be able to hear the difference between 5 musical cents. So here he was working at a level that was 5 times better than the best human ears. And he figured out, I think it was in about 2 years, how to do this. And he developed the equations, he developed the procedure, he developed everything to design a trumpet that was in tune below the level of human discrimination using math and physics, not tinkering it together with this kind of part and that kind of part and seeing how it played. So he put the nail in the coffin, meaning how to design and build a trumpet from scratch using math physics that would play in tune. Now, why would you want a trumpet that plays in tune? Well, once, and I'm going to include the mouthpiece on this, once you have a mouthpiece and a trumpet that's designed correctly and dialed in for the way you play, so that all these notes are as in tune as we can get them, you get just about everything we want as trumpet players. You get a full resonant sound to start with because all of the harmonics reinforce each other. You get sympathetic vibrations. Along with that, there's no guesswork where the notes are supposed to be. If you're playing a middle C and your ears and everything perceive where the high C is supposed to be, and it's not there, it's harder to play. You're trying to find it. If it's right where it's supposed to be, everything's good. It's easier to play. So the upper register gets easier. When the upper register gets easier, endurance increases. When the instrument is designed and the mouthpiece are designed correctly, all the registers can sound full and easy. There are many mouthpieces out there, for example, that have a great upper register, but they don't have a good low register. When everything's designed correctly, you get everything.
Basically, you're talking about lining up the overtones in the horn off of every note, getting this in tune system. in short, just in a very short way of trying to explain how did he achieve that? I mean, what do you do to the trumpet to get that? I mean, how do you achieve this?
If you look at most advertisements for trumpets, you'll see that they advertise things like, oh, it's got a 5¼ inch bell. Oh, it comes with both a rounded and an ovate tuning slide. Oh, it's got these kind of water keys. It's got braces here and braces there. These are all external factors. Well, the truth is, to get an instrument that plays well and is in tune, it's not about the type of bracing or the type of water keys or putting ferrules somewhere on the outside of the horn. It's about getting the air column tuned correctly. Sounds like a simple thing, and the definition of the air column is very simple. It's the air inside the tubes of a wind instrument. Well, that sounds pretty simple. However, it's a little bit more complicated. I'll try to make it simple, and you asked for short, ain't gonna be short. So, the simplest air column that I can think of is a Coke bottle, or a water bottle, whatever. A bottle that's got some water in it, and if you blow across the top, it's gonna produce a tone. And that's caused by the air that's resonating in this Coke bottle. And it's a very simple air column. It's got basically one note that will resonate on it. And if you want the note to be lower, you drink more water, and the pitch would get lower. And if you wanted the pitch to go higher, you'd add more water to it. That's the simplest air column I can think of. Let's make the air column a little bit more complicated. Let's get a whole bunch of Coke bottles. Little Coke bottles, medium Coke bottles, really, really big Coke bottles. Let's fill them to different levels with the pitch, and let's put them in a church and call them a pipe organ. Now, every one of those Coke bottles in the pipe organ, or truthfully every tube, every pipe in a pipe organ, is responsible for the intonation of one note. One note. So let's say, for example, one of the F naturals is flat. Well, grab a hacksaw, saw some of that pipe off till you get it to the right length, and now you've put it in tune. Pretty simple to fix. The problem with this trumpet is it's not a set of discrete air columns. It's a continuous air column that in each position, whether it's open, second, first, any one of these valves pressed down, in any given position, it's responsible for the intonation of at least 6 notes over a 2-octave range. Okay, that's a little bit more complicated. What if the shape of this air column is all good, but the F natural is flat? We can't saw off part of the pipe that only affects the F natural. If we shorten the first valve for the F natural, it's also affecting the D, isn't it? And the B flat. And through other things it's called mode shifting, it can affect other notes that aren't even related to that. So it's the internal shape of this air column that determines how in tune the instrument is with itself.